The world of technology is very fast-paced. From the dawn of humanity, human beings have constantly been striving for betterment in terms of investing things that make life easier. When these things are not addressing necessities, they are often taken as luxuries. And when it comes to luxuries and technology, there is one brand that comes to everyone's mind. If you think like most others and are not living under a rock, the chances are that the name you are thinking about is also Apple. With the electronic industry being worth over $4.5 trillion in 2019, Apple is one of the major players, with itself being valued at over $2 trillion alone. And part of this massive success against its competitors is the constant inflow of innovative ideas that Apple brings to the table. One of the latest innovations by Apple, which has been the subject of many technological debates, is about the Apple glasses. The idea behind the Apple glasses is not necessarily a new one. In fact, even back in 2015, they were widely being talked about and were thought of as being just around the corner. However, as we all know, they are yet to be produced on a mass scale, let alone being introduced into the market. However, with the major stepping up it will bring in the use of technology in everyday life, it could greatly affect the technology industry as a whole. So much so, it could even be a major game changer and take Apple decades ahead of its counterparts. One of the major reasons for it being described as a game changer is the fact that it will be the first ever product of its kind. This will feature the world's first ever glass operating system where the entire panel will be seen through and will let the users have a very based purpose for the device rather than simply its electronic features. In simpler words, when you're not using them to do cool Apple-ish stuff, you can simply use them as a neat fashion statement like normal glasses. However, it is speculated that the glasses will not be entirely independent, rather they will base their core functions on an iPhone that they will likely be paired with. So basically, everything that you need to do on your phone, you'll be able to do so without the phone. For everyone who thought taking out an expensive iPhone from their pocket every time they needed to make a call or upload a post on Instagram was too much of a hassle, the new Apple glasses will save you that misery. But that is not simply it. Of course, until the actual product comes out, Apple is still considering different kinds of features and the feasibility of their inclusion into the Apple glasses. However, the Apple glasses are rumored to have a separate Apple Store, something similar to those for the Apple Watch and TV. However, whilst this might seem like a sly money-making scheme, it makes perfect sense for Apple to do so, as the glasses will include a multitude of simplified features that would simply not make sense to have on your conventional Apple Store. For starters, different versions of apps would have to be developed compared to the ones already existing on the Apple Store. For this, not only will Apple have to reassess existing apps' compatibility with the Apple Glasses interface, but developers for these apps will also have to consider redesigning certain features altogether. This makes sense, since you would simply not want too much information excessively displayed on your Apple glasses, in effect, hindering your natural line of sight. Furthermore, interactive features for applications such as maps would also have to be developed from scratch. One cool suggested feature is how the Apple Watch will automatically analyze the user's line of sight and compare that to the images and directions given on the map to give the user real-time information on where to head towards thereon. Simply put, wherever you look, the map will automatically readjust its bearings and vectors to suggest possible routes from your current line of sight. This will definitely need a lot of complex data processing that will not be adequately met by existing apps. So having a dedicated app store makes perfect sense when things like this are thoroughly considered. Some say the Apple glasses are going to have an additional prescription fee charged based on a person's weak eyesight. This will bring the cost up a bit, and in case of changes in visual strength, people will have to get their glasses changed or the panels readjusted. Unsurprisingly, this can be a very expensive endeavour if this should be the case. However, there are rumours that the Apple glasses will have a new separate feature that will bypass this inconvenience. It is thought that the Apple glasses will have a separate optical sub-assembly that will automatically adjust the lenses and their convergence and divergence indices to better suit the user's visionary capacity. Simply put, if your eyesight gets weaker or better, the Apple glasses will probably adjust the lenses automatically through complex laser light technology to save you the hassle of getting your number changed. Oh, and one more cool thing about this technology that is a necessary mention is that these glasses will have to allow anyone to see better in the dark. But in the end, how does Apple achieve all of this? And what is it that makes Apple glasses an industry game changer? There are a lot of answers to this, but the basic idea is the revolutionary incorporation of augmented reality. This is the fundamental concept behind the Apple glasses and has been something that all competitors in the industry have been individually looking towards developing. Currently, virtual reality has been a great focus for the industry, and most major players have already reached that step. But the real challenge was the development of augmented reality platforms, which is aimed to immerse digital landscapes into the physical world through sensory manipulation. So far, we only knew about these kinds of technologies through science fiction movies and television series, but it turns out Apple is working ahead of mankind to bring those fantasies to life. It is this very promise of a futuristic device that has the entire world and industry on their toes. So far, only Samsung has come far enough to propose developing such a technology. However, luckily for Apple, they have already gone ahead and patented many of the ideas that we would normally expect for such a device to incorporate. This gives Apple a very important edge over key features that would create a fundamental differentiated advantage. This will create a huge functional gap between Apple glasses and any other competitor's version of augmented reality glasses. Furthermore, quite frankly, Samsung is the only major threat to Apple, and the two are the most frequent competitors for market control. Despite the fact that Samsung has a larger user base than Apple, certain financial commitments and policies do not allow Samsung to have large amounts of retained earnings. This means that despite being larger in terms of users, Samsung is worth much less than Apple. Added to this, Samsung has a lot of partners when it comes to software development, particularly the operating systems employed in its devices. This forces Samsung to have major technical development issues that Apple can easily move around. Collectively, these structural differences really bring Apple on top when it comes to product research and development, exactly the reason that Apple glasses are expected to come out first. Once they do come out though, Apple glasses are almost destined to bring Apple leaps and bounds ahead of any other player in the industry. The first to incorporate augmented reality into the mainstream consumer market will be the one to control our transition into the future. Hence, it might quite fairly be stated that once they come out at just $499, a not so hefty price for such a futuristic device, Apple glasses will change the game for all competitors in the electronics industry. Well, that was about it for the Apple glasses. Leave a thumbs up and comment on what you think. The prospect of humanity moving towards the future we imagine is very exciting. And if you want to stay constantly updated about this transition, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. Until next time,